to open the planning board meeting. All in favor? Do we have anyone here that has anything to speak of other than what's on the agenda?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Mr.
Well, we can talk about it an hour later, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. Something concerning the board.
Oh, okay. You want to hold off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Dan Hagan Jr., I'm an attorney representing my mother's interest in the Highway Business Committee. I know on your agenda tonight you have Highway Business listed under old business. I was just wondering, is it going to be discussed tonight or not? And I just kind of wanted to get a little clarity on that.
The way that the agenda is set up for your clarification, for all future clarifications, is new business and old business would be discussed. What's not discussed is the stuff called unfinished business.
Okay.
Those are the things that are placeholders for the board so that they remember that these things are pending and they need attention at some point.
Okay.
How much discussion the board will give, I don't know, but
Okay.
it will be discussed on some capacity.
Okay. Okay, no, I would just encourage the board, just maybe in its discussion tonight then, if they could, I know it's a relatively controversial issue, and just if what's going to be talked about, just maybe to highlight it so that, to be fair to all sides, that the committee is able to be here as well as residents, or table it, as the committee has indicated they weren't sure how you were going to deal with it, and table it and make them advisory as you consider future zoning regulations, however you choose to handle it, but just because a lot of people are obviously interested in the topic, so thank you.
Anyone else? We're on for the minutes of August 13th. Is there a motion to accept?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
I'll say that.
Okay.
I would just want to make sure that the minutes are accepted, the ones that have my edits.
The revisions for Jessica.
Thank you.
The A&Rs.
2 A&Rs. First is Kevin Netto, 35 Frake Street.
How's that now? Go upside down. You gotta flip them back.
Oh, Jesus. Thank you.
There we go. It's the letters that are the way.
Yeah, I know. I think it's my glasses.
Presenter.
You have it presented? Yeah.
What we did is, when we initially were here, we were going to demo the house. And what we did with the historicals is we took some footage off the back as the carriage house and the barns now. So to meet the setbacks and have room for a garage, we shifted the two lots underneath the side this way. Didn't touch this lot and didn't touch this lot. So everything still conforms square footage wise, and then we have
Don't have the
a rear
same
setback on the rear.
Have anything?
Furnish looks good.
Frontage is still there.
Yeah, nothing changed.
So,
I motion to approve.
second.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
So. Sign.
You gotta sign it, right?
Yeah. Here, Jake, thank you.
Hit the thing up
Right, and I'm signing. Good. Here's what I'm signing.
That looks really nice up there. It's a lot better. I live right down the street from there.
Yeah. I think you walked by this window.
Yeah, I see out in the park.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would,
Yours.
probably one copy for yourself.
One copy?
Yeah, one copy for you. You're welcome. You sign any of these? Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Yeah, good.
What do you have from,
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? Rick Cernak. So what we have here is mom and dad bought a lot next door to their house back in the 60s, and they lost the right to use it in the 90s as a building lot. So what I did was I went ahead and talked to some neighbors to see if they would sell 3,000 square feet, and we had to move the boundary lines in order to accommodate that, so that each lot that mom has would now be compliant, conform with the current regulations in R40. We already had the required frontage, and setbacks are appropriate. It was just we didn't have the square footage. So this combined with this equals, there's a note down here, 30,421, so that's over. And then this one here, which is the vacant lot, that was shy, now we'll have 40,100.
This going in through here,
Yeah.
and then this goes to here.
That's right.
Any board members have any comments on it?
Looks like it resolves the issue to me, so.
Yeah.
I motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Sign away.
Well, I know my baseball player feels like that.
Yeah, but I'm not, I don't charge for my,
You don't get the salary.
yeah.
Did all the vacation time we got?
Has everyone signed in at this point? Is there anyone here who's not signed in? Thank you.
Yours?
And one signature is adequate on this?
Yes.
Very good.
It is.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
First that we have under new businesses.
I think we're all set.
Yep, you're all set.
Thank you very much. You're whole again.
Thank you.
Under new business, we have Julian Estates, release of lots.
You've received multiple correspondence. One is the actual legal document that needs to be signed tonight with a letter from Amanda Zimmerman's Kemp. Is that wrong? Kemp Zedonis?
No,
They did it right, okay.
It is.
And then you also received a letter from the Hampton East Condo Association regarding the adequacy of the landscape plantings, and then also a letter from the city engineer regarding the infrastructure.
I noted that the city engineer recommended only one of the lots, I believe lot 3.
That's the only lot they're asking for.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
And, Lord.
I tend to feel that the city engineer is good at what he does, so
Yeah,
should go with that opinion.
on lot 3.
You need to see what lot 3 looks like on a subdivision plan, because I have it.
Okay, so I have this one.
Thoroughly done in the right.
I don't see an issue with that.
See, I was under the impression it was gonna be this one, not that one.
Lot 9?
That's the guy in the condo, so. So that's even more place like that.
So do we make a motion to release?
Do we need any specific language?
Well, you're gonna have to execute this, all this is made out for Ron to sign, so. I don't know.
I can change it and bring it.
Okay, want to do that? Let's do the motion and vote on it, and then, Chet, you need to sign some stuff, if you need to come back and sign,
Okay,
all right? Because it has Ron still on there as the...
right.
I'll make a motion that we release lot number 3 as requested by the applicant, and Chet will sign the covenant.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? So this will get changed with until my name on there, and then
Correct,
I'll
and
come
then
back
you need
and
to
sign
sign
it.
it, correct. Sorry, Ron just resigned 2 days ago. So,
So
you'll need to come back down to the planning office to sign the correct document. Once again, I'll just call you and let you know.
Okay. Oh, did you take care of the other thing?
Call you tomorrow and give him his phone and I'll change it for you too. Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right, I didn't know.
No, I didn't catch it.
Well, I gave it to you before, you said you just resigned 2 weeks ago, so I didn't get it to you 2 weeks ago.
I should have thought to.
No problem, so I'll call you tomorrow.
Yes,
So we're
sounds good. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have a,
You want to wait till 20 minutes, Jessica?
so next we have a request from the city council to amend various sections of the zoning ordinance with regards to special permit process.
This was a request that came in from City Council in early July, and we need to take action on this by September 13th.
So we need a public hearing.
So
You need to schedule a public hearing on this, but I think we need to warrant some discussion before we get to that public hearing stage, because there's still a lot of questions and things that need to be hashed out. Does everybody have a copy of the document I sent earlier, or do you need me to make photocopies? You don't have one? Chet, do you have one?
I have it here, but I'd rather have a hard copy.
I have my copy.
My copier doesn't work. My copier,
This copier doesn't work. I don't have a copy. I thought it'd be easier.
I like the way just read her comments. It was really easy to isolate what she was looking to change and why.
Is Barbara here? No, Barbara.
There's me,
You? Yeah.
Barbara Hope.
I have a little bit of difficulty with cursive, so I'm trying to understand, is that Reader or Pieter?
Oh, Pinder,
P-I-N-D-E-R.
P-I-N-D-E-R.
Thank you very much.
So I presume you have the original package that was sent down by City Council. What it was in reference to was a letter that was sent by Jack Fitzgibbons in response to a request during the Parsons Village special permit process. It was a list of zoning inconsistencies or questions that Jack answered. City Council picked 4 of them, so it wasn't addressing the whole list in the letter. It was only addressing number 2, number 3, number 4, number 7. And so I made a quick attempt today to just try to highlight where the inconsistencies are for discussion purposes, make some recommendations on how to make some clarifications. I'm personally not super happy with the first section right now. I think it still needs a lot of work. So I don't know if we want to just talk about the other 3 sections first, because those are easy, and we can just move through those easy and then come back to that first section, because it's a much longer discussion. It's really confusing. I almost feel like it's better to throw the whole section out and rewrite it at this point, but we could try to work with the framework that we have and try to make it more clear.
Let's do the easy ones first.
We'll do the easy one first? Okay. So the second request is regards to the distance between walls of principal structures. That was under section 6.8. And the ordinance subcommittee's recommendation was to add the language multifamily developments, which you'll see the way that this document is set up is that deletions have a strike through them and additions are bold and italics. So page 2, Harry, are you in the right spot? There you go. There you are. Beautiful. Okay. So the recommendation is for section 6.83 to add multifamily developments to that first paragraph. So it'll read, except for planned business and industrial development, multifamily developments, community facilities, and public utilities, only one principal structure shall be permitted on a lot. And also the recommendation was to add, except multifamily developments under subsection A, under that same section. that those standards don't apply, and that the design standards that are listed under the multifamily section of the ordinance would apply.
Can I ask a question that I think is going to pop up overall? When I went through this earlier, one of the comments I noted was that it said there was no designation or definition for multifamily. Was that just for that one section, or is that just an endemic to the...
If you go to the definition section of the zoning ordinance, the only multifamily definition is a multifamily definition that doesn't exist in the zoning anymore. It's a section of the ordinance that was struck out in 2008. So that's the multifamily housing for elderly and or handicapped persons. That's the only multifamily definition we have. We have no ordinance that it refers to. That ordinance was struck out.
Okay.
So that definition probably just needs to be deleted. But in general, multifamily, unless it's defined differently, is considered to be 3 units or above.
So that's like the default if we don't put language in.
Right.
So modifying this to use multifamily will use that default.
Right, unless you wanted to create a multifamily definition that specifically says 3 units or and above. I mean, the thing is these seem like simple changes, but it opens up a whole giant can of worms. And it just, this is what, when we do this, this is when I start going, we just need to start over. We just need to go through this and comb through it and pick out all the inconsistencies and all of the issues and do it in one full swoop.
It's almost like starting at the beginning.
We would need to start at the beginning. I mean, the definition section itself of the zoning ordinance is a mess. There's things in there that are doubly defined.
Contradictory.
And contradictory.
Right, and
Terms that aren't used anywhere else, terms that need to be defined that are not defined. I mean, it's just, even the definition section itself is a bit of a mess.
So we look at this 6A3 and say this is easy, but then it's got that multifamily issue in there, which forces us to kind of address, do we want to remove it?
Potentially. I mean, there hasn't been any confusion interpretation-wise between planning and building in regards to what makes a multifamily development. But I think what makes it interesting is that we have a whole section of multifamily development zoning that really is thinking about bigger development projects, not smaller development projects. And for instance, the section regarding open space, which neither Jack Fitzgibbon or the other attorney both thought was an odd section, an odd part of the multifamily section. And if you think about it, if we have, just a small infill multifamily that's a 4-unit project, and now we're going to require them to have half of the parcel remain as open space, that doesn't make sense. I mean, that makes sense if you're talking about a much bigger, 40-unit project, but if you're talking about a small infill multifamily development project, does that really make sense? And so, it's just opening up that interpretation.
but if you're talking about larger multifamily,
Then it would be great.
instead of 4 units, but a larger 10, 15, 20 units,
Sure.
50% wouldn't be bad.
No,
But
not
the
at all.
existing language doesn't acknowledge the difference between
But-
multifamily.
Right. So the
If you only
existing
have a 4
language,
unit, we'll say, how would you define the percentage?
you take half the lot and say half of it has to be preserved as open
Just,
space. And
just definite, just half that lot has to be
50% of the total area has to be,
Open space.
and it also says that it has to be taken over for permanent protection by the Conservation Commission. Does the Conservation Commission really want to maintain,
Right.
5,000 square
5,000
feet
Right.
that has no conservation value to it? I mean, it doesn't make sense. It makes sense, yes, on the bigger projects. And so I think that that section needs some discussion and thought about, you don't want to strike it out completely because you want to still have the ability to recommend that. So maybe it's a matter of just changing the shalls to mays, and so that it's an option that goes into a developer's head and they say, oh, okay, this could be something that we could be incorporating, but just not mandating it or requiring it, which, could be harmful if you have a bigger project, but at the same time, for somebody who's coming in for 4 units,
There's so many ramifications.
you don't want to have to require something like that,
Well, the other thing you can do is make it permanent, but specify what size, like number of units, before you make it permanent.
There you go.
so
Or
definite, make a...
or area.
Or
Right.
area. I think area would be better rather than size, which is area.
Well, unit number could be the other way to say that, if it's 30 units, you're not going to, but if it's 25, you are.
You're gonna, It's almost, if you have larger, it's going to be almost mandatory to have 50%.
So is there something in that open space section that you want me to try to play around with for language?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we need somehow to either give us discretion to waive the requirement or make it on a scale based on either lot size or the number of units.
And it would have to be, I would think, more specific language so that it's known that this is the way. You know, instead of having someone say, well, why can't, how come he or she can do this and I can't? It's just have a specific writing in it and make sure that they understand that this is the way it's going to be.
Here's the thing, we have to hold a public hearing on this in 2 weeks. So we need to come to some consensus so I can at least draft language that everybody's happy with going into a public hearing process, knowing that it absolutely can get changed during the public hearing process, and that's what the public hearing process is for. It's not set in stone going into that, but I'd like at least some board consensus of how you'd like to approach that. I mean, the other easy option is just to scrap the whole thing, and then you don't have to, but then that doesn't give you the option to put it on the table.
Well, I mean, what if we just say that basically the board may require that up to 50% of the land in multifamily, for the multifamily projects can be set aside, and then it's at our discretion.
At the board's discretion.
A little squishy, don't you
Yeah.
think? A little too squishy?
I mean,
Would you like some guy, I mean, I'd feel more comfortable with at least a number or an acreage or something.
for the lot size.
Just something to give, I just think you can open yourself up to trouble if you leave it a little bit too open wide. That it's up
Well, I
to
think
the board
whatever we're
discretion.
doing, we're probably going to give ourselves discretion, right? I mean, we're not going to make it mandatory.
Right, the
So-
board may require that.
So I mean, whether we make
Okay.
it may require or we make it mandatory, but we have discretion to waive the requirement, it's all still
So just using the
discretionary.
term may, I think,
Right.
gives you that option. You set aside, I could say something like for projects over number of units or number of acres.
Number of
May require that up
units.
to 50% of the land in a multifamily project can be set aside at the planning board's discretion for open space.
Yeah, but wouldn't you want by number of units? Or
I don't know, I'm asking you, you're the one who land.
Or you could, I mean, you could do both too. I mean, you could say it's either this large of a lot or it's this many units.
50% of the land or how many units?
I mean, I think we have to think about the conservation
Or
value
number of units.
of the 50%. I mean,
how many?
you know,
That's the
it doesn't
problem.
have to be a conservation, it could be for recreation or something. It could be a pocket park, it could be small, I guess. I'm talking myself in circles.
Oh, we're looking for a number of units? Is that what you're looking for?
I know, it seems hard to pin something down.
Yeah. I think 50% of the land is just about generic enough.
Right, I don't think we should have to put number of units in.
Okay, well, I'll leave it at that. The planning board may require that 50% of the parcel be set aside for
Open space.
open space or recreation. And then we'll take out all the other, should we take out the stuff about the grass and landscape land, active passive recreation, that whole section?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
would
scrap
probably.
that part?
Yeah, that should be.
And just leave it as, may require that 50%, and just leave it at that?
I think that's simpler.
Should we leave this up about being permanently protected? Or no? I don't
No, I don't think so.
think so. Okay. I'd be happy with a pocket park,
Yeah,
but
yeah, that could be done too.
that could be privately maintained. Right?
I mean, that's the other thing is you don't necessarily want to impose a burden on some other city entity to maintain this.
Right.
If they don't want it either.
Right. And there's lots of examples of successfully maintained private open spaces, privately owned open spaces that provide a public benefit. They're open to the public, but they're privately owned and they're privately maintained. So. Okay, so we'll try that out for size and see how that flies. Okay, so the request number 3, that was a very simple amendment of just adding feet after 50. So that was simple. And then I recommend that the board consider just deleting that multifamily housing definition.
That doesn't exist
It just
anymore.
doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
get down to 3 or more units by
Yeah.
default. I would agree with that.
Okay. All right, so should we tackle the first one now, which is the
Yep.
most confusing one with all of my red bubbles everywhere? Okay, so
6, 7.
let me just sort of go through the bubbles here and highlight things. So this is a section that's for accessory buildings. An accessory building is defined in our zoning as a detached building. So you see that highlighted in that first definition, so I just wanted to highlight that to you. The first thing is in the header itself, it refers to a general business district, which doesn't exist. That's one of our major flaws in our zoning, is it keeps referring over and over again to this general business district that doesn't exist on the zoning map anywhere. So I would recommend that you just delete that header from there completely. I did note, just for your consideration, that downtown business is not included in this list, and I'm not sure if it should be or not, because those lots downtown are pretty small, but, and it's mostly commercial. But anyway, I just wanted to highlight that to you, and you can keep that as a point of discussion. The second part was in the first sentence after the header. It says that these following provisions are for detached accessory buildings. So the first part says that the accessory building shall not occupy more than 25% of the required rear yard. It shall not be less than 30 feet from the front street line, or less than 10 feet from any principal building. Now, I've highlighted that last section about the less than 10 feet from any principal building because in section 6.75, when it's referring to accessory buildings other than garages, there's a section there that says that the building shall not be placed less than 5 feet from the rear of any principal building. So we have a less than 10 feet and a less than 5 feet. So we have two numbers that
Yeah.
conflict. Okay, so there's the first conflict. The second is that we have provisions that are supposed to be for detached accessory buildings, but then one of the provisions is for an attached accessory building, which I went to the building inspector today and I asked him, okay, how do you, because he's the one who uses this section the most, really. I said, what do you consider to be the attached accessory building? He said, essentially a garage that's being built off of a building that might have a common wall or a breezeway that's connecting the two structures together. So based on that, which of course we don't have a specific definition for that, right? So, so it's saying, and this makes perfect sense to me anyway, that it's got to be attached to the building, should be considered a part of the building, and it needs to meet all the requirements for setbacks. Perfect. I think that makes perfect sense. If it's going to be attached to the building, it needs to meet the setback requirements. So the second, the third paragraph, which is 6.73, I've added a couple things in here based on my discussion with the building inspector. So this is to be interpreted, and it doesn't say it, that it's for a detached one-story building. It does, if you reference back up here, where it says detached, but then we have the attached stuff in between, so it confuses it in my mind. So if the building is 150 feet or more from the front lot line, all it says in the zoning now is that a setback distance of 15 feet is required. It's to be interpreted as the side setback. So I've put side in there to clarify that it's in reference to the side setback. Otherwise, the 25-foot side setback distance from any other lot line is required. So those three changes were put in there for clarification.
Good changes, I think.
Yeah.
So now we get down to the really confusing part. So we've got two different definitions here, I guess. One is we've got the maximum height for accessory buildings. And so I said to the building inspector, okay, what what do you consider to be accessory building? Because the next line says accessory buildings other than garages. So, and he said, well, to him, an accessory building would be a garage, a barn, a work shed, all of these things, which I wasn't thinking of. I didn't think of the barn. But then you have a header underneath it that says accessory buildings other than garages, which anybody, I think, could put a barn saying, well, barn's not a garage, so it's got to meet these requirements. So we've got different things going on here. And then, according to the building inspector also, section 6.5, and those standards refer to things that are structures, not buildings, like a swimming pool, a tool shed, a playhouse, a doghouse, those things that aren't a building because they don't have the ceiling capacity because they're only allowed to be 12 feet in height, no larger than 12 feet. So you can't park a car in there, but I think there's confusion. So what do you think?
Immediately, I'm trying to find a way to, categorize these two things, but you've got garages, barns, workshops, etc., which is the real problem, and then swimming pools, tool sheds, playhouses, etc.
And let me just sort of highlight in the table of uses, in the accessory uses section, number 3 under accessory uses says, accessory buildings such as private garage, playhouse, greenhouse not used in farming operations, tool shed, private swimming pool, or similar accessory structures. So that's one category in the table of uses. And then the other category right after it is accessory private garage for not more than 3 non-commercial motor vehicles and except on a farm not more than 10,000 pounds registered GVW or less in size commercial motor vehicle. So the private garage is pulled out as its own separate thing, but it's also listed as one of the accessory buildings in the previous one. So we've got two conflicting there.
It's better and better.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's a huge can of worms. These seem like they're simple changes, but they're not. One thing leads to the next thing. That's why I keep advocating for the comprehensive zoning, but because then you can just check that all of these things don't conflict with one another. But nonetheless, so I don't know how you want to proceed with this section because I almost feel like it's such a mess. It's hard to fix because it's such a mess. And I'm feeling like it would be better just to throw it out and start over again. But I don't like heading into a public hearing by throwing it out and starting over again with something brand new. I mean, I think we could, but it makes...
Offer that as an option at the meeting.
Right. So...
Other than that, my suggestion would be that garages and barns should be the only things that qualify at 25 feet. Work sheds should not. They should be 12 feet in height. And everything else is 12 feet at limit. So only barns and garages.
Well, so here's the problem though. How would you define a barn? Just keep livestock in it? I mean, if I want a 25-foot ceiling in my tool shed, and I build it like a barn,
Yeah.
If you're going to build a man cave and you want it to be 25 feet in height.
Just call it a barn.
Right. Or a garage, you just, put a rolling door on one side. I mean, that's the problem is
that's a
the
good
difference between a workshop, a tool shed, a playhouse, a doghouse. I mean, they're all...
So it's...
You could be listing these things to...
Well, you could use all those terms to define one structure.
Or really
and
just
you'd
like
be
a
right.
garage and
Garage, barn.
And you're saying there's variance for barn. You could say barn for livestock.
I can say, right, but I mean, I can also say, I mean, I have a garage that's not attached to my house and I haven't parked my car in it 3 years. It's still, I consider it my garage, but it's really probably more like a work shed or a storage space or, so it's hard to define
Define the use.
the structures.
Which is, so I mean, so that leads us back to the accessory buildings is a good term. However, the problem is that we've got too many numbers in here. We're trying to, it's almost like we're over-regulating in a way.
I don't know. I do think it's important to limit shed height, especially if it's 5 feet from people's property line. You don't want those 25 feet tall. I think that's a good thing that we're doing there. So, I mean, I like that there's, 25 for your garage and 12 for, I know it seems like we're overdoing things, but that seems like a legitimate use. If someone puts up a building right on your line and blocks your view, I think 12 feet for something right on the property border is about appropriate. Call me crazy.
The other sort of thing to note is under this maximum height for accessory buildings, nowhere in there does it say that it needs to be in the rear, like it does underneath. So somebody could
put it up.
Put it in the front.
Right at the front.
I was just gonna say.
I think that
But I think traditionally most people are putting them in the back, they're not putting them in the front. But nonetheless, if it's a private garage or if it's a barn, there's
could go
nothing
in the
saying it
front.
doesn't have, it's nothing prohibiting putting it in the front setback. Not in the setback, but in the front
Front
yard.
yard.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Could you say limit to, no, yeah,
I stand
to
by,
the rear setback only, not, no.
I stand by calling it garage or barn for livestock, but more importantly, scrap it. There's two great ideas to bring to public forum.
It's a hearing, not a forum.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Terminology.
But no, it's important though, because we need to have something available to the public to review prior to the
Right.
public hearing. We need to say that we're doing zoning amendments, and if somebody has the right to come in here and look at what those zoning amendments are, we need to have them. We can't be just say,
Right.
oh, we're still working on them. We need to have something there for people to look at.
And then has anyone got anything better than labeling them garage and barn for livestock and adding a 5-foot limit from the rear of the property?
I mean, the other thing is we could do is just send back to council and say, we're not comfortable with, we think that this section needs a lot more work. We're okay with these 3 amendments moving forward, but it's planning board recommendation that
Could be looked at again.
we hold or something, I don't know.
And we can maybe toss them some of the things that you've
But they can just
highlighted.
move forward with what they want.
Well, not only that, I mean, even the worst of the ideas we've come up with here tonight is better than what's on here.
Right.
We can't make it worse. This is a total
No.
mess.
It is a total mess. It's a total
So-
mess.
So, would it be better to just take these two and send it back to the council and let them try to help figure out which way they want to go with this? Because eventually it's going to go to them anyways.
Well, we're going to come to our public hearing next month, but
Right.
I think it makes sense to do what Jim said, at least for the purposes of discussion, a barn for livestock and a garage.
Hmm.
I think we should specify that all of them should be in the rear yard,
The rear, yeah, the setback.
and the other ones are 12 feet, and I'm sure that I'll hate that idea by the time the public hearing comes around, but...
I already do.
Right, but the idea is that at least there's something there.
That's something to work off of when people come next month, because
It's better than not having anything there or keeping it the way it is.
if nothing else, it might make it clearer for us to come up with better ideas from that.
Unless you want to define private garage as something.
I think it's easier to define accessory building, and then everything else should follow the secondary set of rules. Because there's fewer of what I consider the 674, 675, you could go on and on and on for what those could be.
Oh, yeah, those is good.
The other option, although I don't want to throw this at you because I'm sure I'll get booed out of the room, is that we could meet again before the 13th. We can have an extra meeting.
Is that going to make it any clearer, though?
Well, we
Or
can
you
have an
could
extra
put
meeting.
together some language?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I could take your recommendations from tonight, I could go back and incorporate them, and we could hold an extra meeting just on this topic, and this topic only, and have, and hash it out. Not deal with any other business, but just this.
I'm not adverse to that.
I mean,
Well,
I just
I'm
don't
trying
like
to
going into a public hearing with
Yeah.
wishy-washy language, I guess. but-
Well, I think we can put in clear language, we're just not sure if we're going to support our proposal.
The other, here's the other thing though, now I'm thinking about it. We have to do 2 weeks legal notification, which means that we gotta get the ad in the paper tomorrow.
Yeah. September 10th.
We don't have an extra week this week, do we?
Friday, the 30th is 2 weeks from the 13th.
So I need to get the legal ad in tomorrow,
But our hearing date's the 10th, right?
but I need to
Yeah.
have stuff available to the public.
Right.
So what I can do is this, I can just take what we've talked about tonight, we can just incorporate, take out that general business district, add the detached, the 2 side things. I propose to add accessory buildings and structures other than private garages, and just leave it at that.
But if we define accessory buildings, this shouldn't include,
Well, accessory building's already defined in the zoning.
Okay.
Up here in the top. It already has a definition.
yeah.
And it says it's a detached building.
Not to be confused with an attached accessory building.
Well, that's what I'm
Right.
saying. So we could strike the word detached out of accessory building, just have it say, a building which is subordinate in area or extend to the principal building, B, the use of which it is customarily incidental and subordinate to that of the principal building, and C, is located on the same lot of that occupied by the principal building. There's no reason we can take out
Detached there, yeah. And then it's just specifying that the attached accessory building is,
right. Has to meet the setback
Right.
requirements.
Right.
All the other changes you've made, I think, are good.
Yeah.
No-brainers.
So what do we do about the conflicting feet from the,
I'm sorry.
10
Unless this is
feet
for-
versus 5 feet?
unless the 10 feet's for, well, that doesn't make sense, because that would be attached.
10 feet.
I mean, there is a conflict there, right? I'm not making it up.
No.
Other people see it too? Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess
Unless I'm reading it.
technically, 671 applies to all accessory buildings, and then 675 applies to everything except garages, so you could
Right.
logically
You could
say
leave
that the 10 feet is just for garages.
Okay.
I don't know if we're talking about a barn that's got the same size and shape as a garage. I don't know why that would be treated differently, but that may be not something we want to deal with in this go-around. I don't know.
You mean barn and garage?
And we want to go down that road.
Well, eventually it might come up.
It will. As soon as we do this, I'm sure it will.
I do think
That's what I'm saying, is that do we want to include
Sorry, go ahead.
barn and garage?
I don't know if we want to get into that level of detail. I mean, I think it's better to just have an accessory building definition be an accessory building.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not get into over-defining all of the different things an accessory building could be.
That would mean we
Well,
would
that's
pick a
what I said,
5 or
the
10
list.
feet and just go with it.
Right.
Well, I mean, the way it is now is that it's 10 for garages and 5 for everything else.
Right.
And just leave it at that.
I
So,
mean, I think the logic makes sense in general, that you can put a tool shed closer to the line than,
I may rearrange this section a little bit too, because I
Please
think
do.
the organization is horrendous.
maybe not put the one paragraph about attached accessory buildings in the middle of the whole thing.
That's right. That's right. That's one thing anyway. Or at least put all the detached stuff together and the
All the
attached stuff
attached
together.
stuff together.
At least organize it that way so they're not sporadic.
Detached, detached.
Okay.
Starting to feel detached.
Okay, I'm gonna take these recommendations, I'm gonna incorporate them, and that's what we're gonna go with moving forward to the public hearing. I'm gonna send you the proposed changes to you. I've been trying to get in touch with Salem to see whether, I don't know if they've held a public hearing or not on their stuff, or whether they were waiting for us, so I'm hoping to figure out if I can do a joint public hearing with
Yeah,
ordinance subcommittee. I think that's what we've been doing in the past, it's worked great, so,
Yeah.
and I'll send him a copy of what we're considering. Okay.
Thank you. I don't know how you stay awake in the day doing this.
I wouldn't want to have you read that back.
Yeah.
Did you want me to read what you...
No. I think it'll be better if she puts it together and maybe send us emails or whatever on the corrections.
Get a
And
crystal ball ourselves, straight out.
and then we'll probably be sending emails back saying, wait a minute, I think this might be better. But definitely, we'll have to put the announcement in the paper tomorrow.
Yep. We already have it drafted. I just
Right,
wanted to...
so the board feels that we don't have to have an extra meeting.
I don't think so. I mean, we still need to talk to the ordinance committee, but we can hash it out there. We have a public hearing, and, I mean, worst comes to worst, we can always agree to all the other stuff and say we can't figure out how to deal with that one now, and either go back to the drawing board or not.
I don't think we get much further than we've gotten.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep it at our next meeting. Okay, I guess we'll go into old business. And discussion on the highway business report.
I would suggest that we set aside some time and let these people speak with a set window so we can hear what they have to say. That would just be my personal opinion. I think they've been coming to our meetings and it's good, especially when we're supposed to talk about course of action and things that we want to consider and that sort of thing. And I don't think there's any point in going down that road until we've heard from people who have an interest in the issue.
General feeling of everything.
But I
And
do
in
think
general,
we
your
should.
statement earlier, I think, is apt,
Right.
that we focus on it as an entity, as a group, so we can all work together on it, which I think is what you're saying.
But I do think we should set a window. I mean, I think we could probably be here all night talking about it. I think we could set 15 or 20 minutes or something would be what I'd suggest.
I wonder if we might think about the format a little bit, and about what exactly, I mean, I want to hear what people have to say, but I also want to talk about a little bit then, and maybe just kind of discuss what our format is about what we want to do with it, how far we want to go, if we want to look things line by line and push it to somewhere else, and, where we want to be in this. I wonder just kind of...
Well, should we listen to what these people have to say first and then
Yeah.
we can figure out what we want to do?
Right, that's what I would think we should do. We'll listen to what the public has to say on it, and then we can absorb that and discuss their feelings along with what we have.
How did you want to do that? A special meeting time, or...
Just
No,
now.
we can do it right now.
We can do it now, we can have the public speak now on,
Want to set a time? How much time you want to dedicate to this?
Don't play run out of questions.
well, we could be here a lot longer. How about,
They would-
well, you suggested 15 minutes, so
I
we can
think
go.
Whatever you want, guys want to do.
I think 15 seems reasonable. If we need more,
We're gonna
If you really longer,
take some public issue response on this, but we're gonna limit it to 15 minutes. So, okay, so you can want.
Sure, yeah. So that's important, Dan Hagan, I represent my mother's interest in this. And I guess I sort of, there's two roads here. One is, we can talk about, what I feel is a lot of questions and issues that the residents in that district have with this proposal. But one road that I guess I encourage you, as you experienced tonight, with trying to draft regulation, trying to draft, is it's hard, it's controversial, obviously you have a lot, and this could serve, I guess, as a, advisory sort of thing that doesn't require you to go line by line through, drafting language, and obviously there's a lot of concerns. This is something that I would encourage you to table, take off your agenda, and use simply as if individual zoning proposals come forward or you consider in the future. It's one thing of many things you may consider, in your analysis. But going to the specifics, so I would encourage that, but if you want to talk about specifics in this plan, I guess I would just talk a little bit about the history first. I mentioned in here, and as one of the driving reasons that the committee got started, I just would like to clarify that this was started by a petition that I made to ask that the zoning boundaries of the Highway Business District be reduced. At which point I was told by the then planner that there were several other petitions to make business-friendly changes in the Highway Business District. I was told by the then planner that he wanted to, Stuart Beckley, that he wanted to sit down and discuss those changes and why don't we do it in a comprehensive format. To which at that point I agreed, except that instead of tabling all of the zoning petitions that were coming forward and saying let's hash them out in a comprehensive way, they approved all the business-friendly ones, rejected mine, and then said let's talk. Well, if you look at what happened here, obviously I'm not interested in being part of a committee like that wasn't going to actually consider resident-friendly proposals. And if you look in here, there isn't much resident-friendly in the proposal. There's a reduction in the permitting process that developers have to go through. There's increase in some density, which obviously is not friendly to surrounding residents. There's also some design standards which I guess look good on paper, except there's the ability to have a waiver, so a developer simply has to come and ask for a waiver, and they get reduced permitting, so they get a reduced permit, and can just waive out of the design standard. So it's like this, in the same hand they give it to you, they take it away. So they get their reduced permitting, and then can also not have to give you the design standards that were promised. So, that's a few, just to, I'll let the other residents speak, but those are just a few issues that I, certainly would highlight for you right off the bat as troublesome. So, thank you.
Sir?
Yeah, my name's Theodore Laborde, and my wife Linda is with me. I would just like to get an answer, and I couldn't get it from the advisory committee, as to why our house, the only 3 houses are included on Highland Avenue in this proposed business district. Yet if you look at the proposed district, it is extremely wider than just those 3 homes. It encompasses almost the entire street, both sides of the street, yet they chose to include only 3 homes. So I'm looking for an answer, why was our home included? We were planning to do some renovations because I just retired, and I'm not going to invest money in it if I'm going to be in a business zone. So I'm just looking for an answer. So if sometime in your process, if you could find out what the answer is, I would appreciate it.
Well, just to clarify, the zone hasn't changed. These are proposals, but it's not.
Right.
Nothing's changed, so it's in their proposal, but it's not.
Right.
It's not like the zone has actually changed.
But our property was never considered commercial before. So why now? And since the zone is so large, why only 3 homes? It just doesn't make sense. It's for one thing, it jeopardizes our neighbors' property values. I don't know what it does to ours. Thank you.
Matthew Lever, 25 Highland. I bring your attention to the buildings that were built along just north of where Valley Sports was, the new buildings where Weight Watchers, the mixed-use buildings that are there. And I would bring to your attention that you didn't hear anybody complain about that, because it didn't have the traffic impact, it didn't have a lot of noise, it didn't bring a lot of things that things like a Stop and Shop would bring. Which is one of the reasons I think that you found that the neighbors in all the surrounding neighborhoods had a problem with something the size of a Stop and Shop, because of the scope of traffic issues, the scope of noise issues, and light issues. I don't think that you'll find that you have a group of people who are inconsiderate of the property rights of people who want to build commercial buildings, but think that the commercial buildings ought to fit with the type of area that it's in. There is, for example, you talk about, Mr. Laborde talks about the 3 houses on Highland Avenue. Behind that, north of Highland Avenue, is basically all wetlands and has been delineated as such by the Conservation Commission. And why you would want to include that as part of an 800-foot setback is beyond me. I think that if the scope of development was smaller in nature, I realize at this point they say that there's really only one property that meets the 5-acre idea of having large development. Well, there are plenty of small developments. If people really want to come to Easthampton and use those type of businesses that could be developed along there with the existing regulations as they are. I'm not saying that they don't need to maybe be tweaked some, but that the local residents are not against development when it's development that really merges with the rest of the surrounding area.
Could you spell your last name for me, please?
Leber.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think what all of us are really worried about, I'm sorry, Barbara Finder, that these builders are going to build on each side of our land, and it is wet. A lot of us have trouble with our basements, with water, and it'd be really terrible for all of us after everything is built that we become all flooded and have problems. I know they don't care, but what they propose on both sides, and Highland Avenue is right in the center, like an island, right, Chris? Mm-hmm. An island. And it's going to come from both ways. And 10 years ago, we never had water in our basement, but when they built the post office, say about a half a mile away in the buildings, and they had trouble on Northampton Street with the water, cave-ins, and we, all of a sudden, our basement opened right up, and it was spouting water like you wouldn't believe. So we had to have a pump put in, but they said if there's any more building, and this would probably go for a lot of other people on Highland Avenue, because they've had trouble too, we'd have to put on extra pumps. I know, hey, at least they can consider a little bit when they only care about themselves, but how about all of us on Highland Avenue? And then also wanted to make Highland Avenue like, when Stop and Shop is built, and the other housing development, whatever they're going to put in. They want to use Highland Avenue as to get out of Stop and Shop.
That's not true. That is not true. That is not true.
Well, it's okay.
That's all right.
Just letting you know that's not true.
There's a right-of-way right next to my house.
I know there is.
Different property, different property
owners.
No, but they can still come out that way or in if they build behind us.
Could I expound on that a little? Would that be all right?
Go ahead.
Would that be okay? We spent a year and a half.
I'm sorry, who are you?
John Courtney.
Oh.
Stop and Shop.
Okay.
We spent a year and a half to 2 years dealing with Mr. Cernak, trying to make him happy. Did everything possible. He wanted more than we were getting from Stop and Shop to put the light in. So we stopped dealing them. We had several designs designed for our project, probably 10. There was one with a road that went through our property to Highland Avenue. No, it didn't go. Went from our property to Northampton Street on the other side. Okay? Bernie Gall rejected that road. So we went back to the drawing boards and came up with a plan to design the light with what we had, and it worked out. And it was never our intention to go to Highland Avenue. And so you do have problems. I'm not saying you don't, but we're not one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for clarifying that. Susan Lever, 25 Highland Avenue. I'd like to reiterate one of the things that Mrs. Pinder was talking about with the water issue. The Conservation Commission has now been out to our street twice. We happen to be the landowners that there is a developing sinkhole in our backyard. It's the cumulative effect of all of the building. It's not one particular issue. We have standing water in our yard. There's no question about it. There is a stream that is trying to find its way between the Wendelowski's house and our house. It's now 12 inches deep. It wasn't there 10 years ago, but they've redid the corner of our street. It's fine. They redid the Catherine Root Park, which had water in it. They changed where the cattails are in front of what was Valley Sports. They rerouted the stream to the south side of CVS. All of that is now having an impact on Highland Avenue. So it wasn't one issue. And that's the problem that we're all having. None of these people had water in their basements before. We now have 4 homeowners. These are our homes. These are where our belongings are. We have water sitting in our basements that wasn't there before. When I bought my home from the Cannons, and I'm not beating on the Cannons, please, and I met with the Conservation Commission, I was told the land behind my house is determined to be a wetland. It cannot be built on. There is cattails there, there is skunk cabbage. We've got 2 wetland species growing there. But now we're told, with all of this new zoning, that can be rezoned, and the rumor mill is flying high. I'll tell you right now, it's in full speed. We were told by one of the potential builders that he didn't have to worry about it being a wetland because he isn't going to put basements in. And he could put the property on a slab.
So it didn't have to perk.
So the land doesn't have to perk. That's a real big concern to us because where's the water going to go? You know, it's a water issue, and you can't control the water. People are talking about putting in, I haven't seen a plan for a detention basin. But when the water was standing in between the Wendelowski's yard and my yard, and it was standing there for 10 days, I was told that this was potentially a Board of Health issue because there's now mosquitoes breeding in it. That was not there. It is now there, it is real, and it's becoming a major issue. And it's what needs to happen with, this needs to be broken down, and I'm sorry to put it on anybody's shoulders, because I know you guys are all volunteers, I know that this is hard work, been here, done that before. This needs to be done more piecemeal than it's being done. It can't be a blanket. I know that some of the people are saying they're very concerned because lots of places in this, they want to expedite things and not have to do with permits. And they want to do without, there's several instances in this book where they talk about trying to speed up things so people don't have to get special permits. I understand that there's people that want to build. I get that. But you really need to think about the people whose homes, these are our investments. This is where we have put all of our livelihoods. This is where we've raised our families and hope to let our children inherit the property. But now we have standing water in basements that wasn't there before, and it's there because so much building was done, and every time somebody came in, they asked for a waiver. Can we have a special permit? Can we get a variance? And I think that this needs to be piecemealed a little bit better than what it's done, instead of just asking for this to be accepted the way that it is.
One more.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I did.
I just wanted to clarify what Mark said. Go ahead. I'll let
Ken Bushy, 43 Highland Avenue. The property behind me, which runs behind all the houses on Highland, speaking of water, has become a severe problem for me.
Been there 14 years, and I have a neighbor who is, I believe, because I've seen no permitting, illegally brought in a lot of fill. It has now turned my backyard into a seasonal pond. I have pictures of ducks swimming in my backyard. Being a duck hunter, it's kind of nice. But being a homeowner, not quite. I don't have water in my cellar because I have a raised ranch. I'm built on a slab. My hot tub leaks out the cellar, out the garage, and out the driveway. The other people, I feel sorry for. Now, there was a vernal pool behind my house prior to it being destroyed by a neighbor. All this water that we're talking about, if it gets much higher, I'll be able to launch my 14-foot boat, let alone the canoe out there. And this is any time of year. When I first moved there was some water in the spring, maybe in the fall if the ground was frozen, a lot of rain came in. Now I'm seeing water all the time in my backyard. If this piece back here is turned into business zoning, where's all that water going? Now, I do a lot of work with Fish and Wildlife, so I understand marshlands and stuff rather well. And concrete and buildings and pavement doesn't absorb water, it runs it off. And if I'm the next guy to it, how much higher does the water go? I see two options for myself if this is allowed. One is to get a lawyer and have a good time, or sell my house. I bought it hoping to live here till the end of retirement, but...
Okay, I think we're
Also,
over
you know,
our
excuse me,
limit for our 15
this
minutes.
land on Highland Avenue, when I was small, we used to go down the street, there were no houses. And it was absolutely a swamp. And when my husband and I moved in our 20s, they told us that our cellar, we didn't know it until afterwards. They didn't even start building the house. Was just filled like a pool, right up to the top. We never knew it. But this land is so wet. Of course, the builders filled everything in, but now it's really settling.
Could I just clarify? I think what Barbara was talking about, and I don't think she meant Stop and Shop coming out onto Highland Avenue. We're a dead-end street. Typical kids ride their bikes, people walk their dogs, and on page 12, under Highway Business, it says, going in and leaving this highway business via Highland Avenue, because there's a light there. And we don't want all this traffic. I mean, they're saying 5,000 cars a day at Stop and Shop. You've put in all this building on both sides of Highland Avenue. You're going to have 5,000 cars. That's a residential street. And so the neighborhood would no longer be a neighborhood. You can't put that many cars onto that little dead-end street.
I don't understand on the Stop and Shop, and if people are concerned about Stop and Shop.
No, we're not. No, we're
They're not
talking
coming out of there.
Right, we understand that. That was a misunderstanding. We're talking about the development that is immediately abutting Highland Avenue on both sides. On page 12, it talks about it coming out onto Highland Avenue to go to the light.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Harry, too, that there's actually been easements filed so that the property owners, they would have one business, or potentially could, that's not anything a done deal, but could potentially have one business development from the Stop and Shop parcel across 3 parcels. That could come under common ownership, and if it does, based on the easements and the way the zoning laws are written, they could empty onto side streets. So I think that's what the neighbors are just expressing their concern about. It's not,
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a point of clarification, please? Going by the proposal that is proposed here, are we proposing to have two separate highway business districts? Because as I understand it, besides from having the highway business district down by the river, Pleasant Street also has highway business district. So are we planning on having the same rules apply to the entire highway business district, or are we planning on having more than one?
Right now, this is pertaining to Northampton Street and the highway business.
I understand.
Pleasant Street, I couldn't answer to that. Could it be considered highway business, the way things are going there?
It already is highway business.
It could turn into, no, it's not
zoned
considered highway. It's not zoned
Pleasant
highway
Street's not zoned
business.
highway business.
Look at the map again.
There is reference there to East
I'm
Street,
sorry,
though.
East Street. East Street,
Well,
there's
East
a portion down on East Street. Pleasant
There's a
Street is not
portion there.
zoned
Okay.
highway business.
There's a portion of East Street that
Correct.
was being considered, whether...
No.
No,
There's a
it's-
portion on East Street, right on Route 5, that is zoned highway business. There's
Right.
about 8 parcels down there. My understanding is that they were zoned highway business historically when Route 5 was more of a commercial corridor, there was
Right.
more commercial activity on there. That zone still exists, and yes, those rules still apply. Highway business rules apply to both zones. They're considered the
Okay.
same in the zoning. I don't know who asked the
Thank you, thank you.
Somebody asked the question.
All right. I guess it will be coming to the board for a discussion about this highway business. Now, we can take in everything that was just given to us, and we can absorb that in and discuss that today, or we can carry it over to another meeting. But I'll leave that up to the board.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
think you're right, we need to decide, this needs more time than
Right.
we put to it tonight. But I also like to say that some of the things that were stated here tonight are really a big concern to me, especially the wetlands flooding. I've seen some photos recently of some folk that had little ponds in the yards, now don't, or didn't, and now do. And I've heard allegations of there having been illegal filling going on. And Jessica, I'm wondering, do you know anything about that? Is there,
Yes, I've been on it for 2 months now.
what's going on?
Okay, so,
I looked at your letter.
we were aware that there was some stockpiling going on. The building inspector went out and checked the amounts and levels. As a zoning enforcement officer, he did not believe that it was violating the filling section of the zoning ordinance. We discussed stormwater violations and erosion control. The city engineer went out and looked at it from standing on Papa George's property. He did not feel that there was erosion issues at that time. The Conservation Commission is now reviewing the parcel to see if they have any jurisdiction there. They're not sure if they do or not. The wetlands laws are very specific in regards to what they have jurisdiction over and what they don't have jurisdiction over, and there's a lot of definitions that are very technical to define what they can and cannot do. So we are working on that right now. The Conservation Commission last night discussed putting a stop work order on under the stormwater ordinance because they believe that the over acre clearing has been violated at this point, so they're in the process of putting that paperwork together now.
Do they have any support? I mean, you said that,
What do you mean, do they have any support?
well, they think that, but you said that, the city engineer went out there and...
That was
did-
a month and a half ago. I asked him this morning to go out again, since we had rain last night, to go out and...
Okay.
So I'm relying on the technical experts
Yeah.
that have the zoning, that have the enforcement power to be doing their jobs. So,
And they're aware of it.
they are aware of it. The property owner came in and informed us that he was using the property for agriculture and he was going to be haying and that he was going to be laying seed down, so that's an exemption under the zoning. I've asked the building inspector to make sure that's in fact what he is doing and not doing something else. So we are on it, we are aware of it, we are,
Is this the only one?
what do you mean, is this the
The
only
only
one?
developer doing potentially illegal fill, potentially?
He has an enforcement order on another property and potentially a third property for wetlands.
That's very disturbing.
Well, we need a conservation agent if we want somebody to go out there and be able to.
It's also mentioned too that the people on Highland Avenue can also apply, or I'll say complain, if they can complain to DEP also.
There was a call that came into DEP today. So Mark Stinton at DEP is aware of it, and they're also doing some investigative work.
Well, I wanted to state that because it was really bothering me, that part of all of this. And then we do come down to, what's our next step here?
Right. That's why I was saying that there's a lot to be absorbed just from what was said today. Now, I know we're going to have a lot of discussion on this. Do we want to continue this and go on today, or do we want to table this to another meeting and specifically set forth exact time for this, to go over all this?
It's 7:22 and we still have the issue about fracking to get to, so I suggest we do it another time.
Could I ask one question? Just a quick question. Did I not get, where's everybody from the Highway Business Committee? Did I miss them?
They're done. They've submitted their...
They're done. Once they submitted their...
They're not going to defend this?
They were here last month for our...
You're on the committee, John.
I know.
You can defend it.
Well, these aren't all my friends, you know.
Wait, last meeting I
Well,
thought he wasn't.
it's a good thing you're sitting up there and
My
not
wife
up
said to
front.
invite them all to Thanksgiving dinner, but I'm very, very reluctant to do that.
Well, we can get a few shots. There's a concern that I have too. I know people that live on Highland Avenue, and when I was on Conservation Commission, I know the issues that are there, because I know people there and I've gone to the houses there, and I've been into the backyards, as Sue would know, and the house that was built way up on the end was a disaster too. But when we went through this on Conservation, and as you mentioned, when you were younger, that was a wetland to begin with. Now, houses were built on a wetland. That means to me that if I build a house on a wetland, someday and somehow, I'm going to get water. Now, that's through natural, that's going to happen. You know that. You're built on a wetland, you're going to get water. Other building around you may increase that, but I'm just saying that the whole thing started with the wetlands being built on, and we went through that, and I know I went through it when I was on Conservation. And it was a hard thing to go through and to tell someone, though, that, well, you built your house on a wetland, what'd you expect? And I bet you that's some of the answers you're getting, too.
Please don't make it worse.
You're right. This is what we're going to probably have to go through with all that you said today. That's why we want to table this portion, so we can go over all your comments and then come back with something that we can accept and put forward.
I guess just as a point of order, what would be the problem of having the board just use these kind of as some, I guess the other board put together intended as simply advisory? I mean, does it have to be...
mentioned that in the beginning.
In other words, does it have to be adopted into zoning and go and write zoning laws here? I mean, why wouldn't this be just used as an advisory thing?
I hear that point. I definitely do.
Yeah,
But I still feel like we need to discuss.
All it is
Right.
is advisory. I mean,
Keep it like that, and if there's ever zoning changes that come down, petitions, then you can consult that and at the time and have a discussion about what needs to be done, but
I think there's a lot of things in here that can happen on different timelines to the extent that they even do happen, or if they need to be modified from what's proposed. I don't think that it's going to be a situation where we vote next meeting and say this is all adopted in toto and put into the zoning ordinance. I don't think that's anybody's idea. So, I mean, they had no authority other than to advise us anyways. So now our job is to look through this and decide what, if anything, they've suggested are things that we should take action on, and if so, how. So I don't think that it's, a yay or nay on this plan. I think these are all ideas that we can evaluate individually as we go through it and see.
I don't think it's all bad ideas. There are some things in here that are worth taking.
Right.
The stuff on page 17, just speaking for me personally, if we were to come to enforce that, I would not be for it. So you can
Thank
take that
you.
with you.
Well, the thing
Thank you
is...
for understanding about the wetlands.
The thing is, we are listening to you, and we're also taking this into consideration. We have to take in the business district and the surroundings, and our decision, it isn't not made today. And like I said, I want to hold off on this, take in everything that you said, take everything that's in here, and try to piece something together. Whether we can do it, well, that's another
I think
thing.
The other thing to
I think
remember
that's
is
all
the
we're
ultimate
asking.
decisions by city council.
The city
Not by
council,
you.
once we go through this and say, this is going to be our recommendation, it goes to the city council. Now, what they do with it,
Well, they would vote it up or down.
right, and that's it.
Can I say
So,
something, please?
you know,
We bought our house in 1992. I'm Lori Wendelowski, 29 Highland. I live in between Sue Weber and Barbara, where the pond is forming in the front of our house. We bought our house in 1992. Our house was built in '75. We did not, I'm just referring to what you said about it's wetlands, what did we expect? We did not know that was wetlands, you know what I mean?
The wetlands, the wetlands laws weren't in place then, so
Right.
Yeah,
that's part of the...
it was kind of our back then.
Well, plus, we also have a raised ranch, as do the Hagans and other families on the street. And our house, as well as their house, our basements are refinished. There's carpeting, there's furniture, and this pond that's forming in the front of our house is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's now, what do you say, maybe 15 feet
about 15
from
feet.
our house, which is where, right the corner where the basement is. And I fear that if the Conservation Committee has gone out there again today, it's been so dry lately. There was this pond last night, I was up at 1 in the morning, put my porch light on. The pond was there, but it was so dry that by the time the morning came, it had soaked in.
Right.
So I fear if they've gone out there that they're not going to see all this wet.
The Conservation Commission, the people on there are very adept to how the soils are and that,
Okay.
and what a wetland is and what it isn't. So whether that is a filled pond, they will know the
Okay.
circumference and what would be considered,
By the
how that
fact that
would
it's
get,
like this.
what it would get filled and how it's gonna, but what their decision's going to be is up to them to see what they can do.
Yeah, they were pretty receptive to that. And a lot of us know that the property was wet, but again, yes, the property was wet when we bought our property. But then there were these changes. We love the light at the end of our street, it's not a problem. What they did with the brook, or the wet water that was in where the Catherine Root Park is now, at the corner of Florence and Northampton Street, they changed that. And then they put in that they tried to reroute the stream by CVS. And then they've messed with where the cattails are in front of what was Valley Sports. That's what I'm saying, it's the cumulative effect. It was wet, now we're soaking wet.
Don't take Chet's comments personally, he's just trying to get...
I know, no. I've known Chet a really long time. It's okay. I get Chet.
I would agree that we should put off further discussion on our end until later.
So,
Do you want to, if I put an agenda together for the next meeting, do you want this on the next meeting agenda, or do you want to hold off for a little while and I can put it under the unfinished business category?
I hate to say it, but my personal opinion is that it needs to be dealt with.
so you want the next meeting, is that
I don't want to let it just...
everyone's,
It needs to be dealt with.
I'm happy to discuss it at the next meeting.
next
I
meeting?
don't know if we're ready to make a decision on anything. but-
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess we'll discuss it at our next meeting.
Just what date?
The,
10th?
13th or 10th?
The 13th is our deadline for the ordinance.
Oh, right, okay, that's why I had that meant, so the 10th. Thank you.
That's the second Tuesday of the...
Thank you for your time. That's all we're asking.
Take care now. Gonna launch a boat.
Fracking.
Okay,
Okay, so I forwarded you I know. But really all you need to look at is that there was a letter that they're asking the planning board to sign on to.
But so, these other officials have done it individually. I mean, I don't
Yes.
think we need to do this as a group. I
She's
think
asking
people...
if you want, okay.
It's an interesting point.
I think as a board, instead of a board, because I have my opinions, I would rather if I had to make a motion that we do it on an individual basis.
I would agree with that. I would second that. Or I guess I'll make the motion.
Jesse motion.
Okay, so,
The planning board members decide whether to sign off on this letter on an individual basis.
Oh, yeah, ours was.
Board members decide whether to sign off on the fracking letter.
Careful for your autocorrect.
No typos.
Well, yeah, that's a very easy typo type too. I just have to state the reason why I wanted it that way is because by signing this, I know they've been going door to door too, getting signatures. So that's one thing. And when I went through it, what fracking is and what it does, that's, my opinion is, I wouldn't sign it.
Me too. Okay. I would sign it.
Do we have a second for the motion?
Yeah, I would. You almost got me there. Yeah, he's the chair, so you can't second, right?
No.
So we need a second for my motion.
I'll second.
Having seconds, very good. Okay, so we'll just,
We need to vote.
vote?
you want to vote?
Probably should.
That are
We have a
for
motion.
signing?
No, we're voting on
Jesse
the motion to handle it
Jesse
individually.
motions that the
All in
planning board
favor?
members decide whether to sign off on the fracking letter on an individual basis.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Wait,
You're voting no?
Well, yes, because, but I don't, to signing this?
no,
No, no,
the motion is that we all do it on our own basis.
On our own?
You
Oh,
decide
yes,
on your own.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
late.
It's late. It's late, my brain is, I'm still soaked from
I have
the
it.
water.
I do have an administrative item that I need to bring up, so,
And Harry had something he wanted to address too.
go ahead.
Okay, Harry?
All right, what I propose is starting our meetings at 6:30 instead of 6 o'clock. It would do our two gentlemen down into the table a lot easier getting back from where they're going during the day. And we get out here at 7:30, 8 o'clock, probably 8 o'clock, the absolute latest, most of the time. They make it easier, the public to get here, anybody that works for a living wants to come to the meetings, it'd be easier on them getting here for 6:30 rather than 6. I know it would be when I was working. And the CPA meets at 6:30, Historic meets at 6:30, the ZBA meets at 6:30, so why shouldn't we?
Thank you.
Harry, I love you. But it's hard for me. The later this gets, the foggier my brain gets. And the typing starts to slur.
I think you're doing too much typing personally. You're not a stenographer. You take the highlights and that's about it. You're just doing too much. You don't have to take down every single word that's said. I mean, I think you're overdoing it personally.
I couldn't even if I wanted to.
Anyway, that's what I
That type of
propose.
person, he would like that.
I think it'd be easier all the way around for everybody.
It would certainly be a better time for me personally, but
Well, that's a decision that the board would have to make. So, if you want to put it to a motion, Harry?
I make a motion, we start our meetings at 6:30 rather than 6.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You didn't think about what you were voting for that time, didn't you?
I was thinking if I wanted it to go to at 6:30.
Okay, don't pack up yet, I have something important.
Yeah, I know.
Well, we should also allow Jim to get his vote on the record.
Yes,
I'll
Jim?
put it in there.
You control the record.
It's not that big.
Okay, so, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, so this is in regards to medical marijuana. It was gonna come at some point. I have been working with Pioneer Valley Planning Commission with other communities in the region to develop a model ordinance for medical marijuana dispensaries. I think the board needs to consider either, one, passing a moratorium until we get an ordinance in place, or two, just moving forward with an ordinance. The model is getting fairly close to done. If you saw in the paper in the past couple days, there are now 20 dispensaries that have submitted applications to the state and Hampshire County alone. I was contacted directly by one of those dispensaries today to have a meeting to see whether they would be a good fit for Easthampton. We need to have something in place. We can't move forward without having some regulation in place that addresses how these facilities would be cited, regulated, permitted. So I want you to seriously consider either two things. One, get a moratorium in place and getting that passed now, pushing it through so that we can give ourselves maybe 6 months to craft something that we're comfortable with, or holding off until the model ordinance is done and then I'll move it forward with you. But I think it's something we really need to address. We can't ignore it.
What are your feelings? Which way? The moratorium.
Means until, I just want to make sure I understand what you're
So the
saying.
moratorium-
We can't do nothing until the final.
Right, so the moratorium has a set time. It can't be forever, there has to be a
Right.
set time frame to it. Usually, you could do like a 6-month moratorium, which says that you would not accept any applications, or you wouldn't hear this type of use until, the moratorium has to say that until you have regulations put in place. So you have 6 months to get your act together, and then you're open for business.
And the alternative?
The alternative is, I'm in the process of, it's probably, I'd say 90% on this model ordinance that we've been working on. I mean, I could even take it in the frame that we have now and bring it to you, and we could start working on it, and moving that forward through the legislative process. But we need to do one or the other, in my opinion. And to me, it really just sort of, when I saw the paper and saw there were 20 dispensaries in Hampshire County alone, and then when I got the call today, we have to do something. We can't pretend that this isn't going to happen.
So, we're better off, instead of the moratorium, is trying to get something together and get it done now. So that we'll have something to do, or to deal with when we do, like you say, you got the application.
I mean, it could take 2 months for us to get a moratorium passed through council, because, you'd have to propose it, you have to hold the public hearing, council has to kick it to ordinance, they have to hold a hearing, then it goes back to regular council. So it could be 2 months just getting a moratorium.
And then you're gonna add almost 6
And then
months
by that
after
point, I probably will have a model ordinance complete that we could be working off of. So I think maybe what we could do is just move forward with the model.
Right.
And, we have to get this other stuff done, this other zoning stuff that we discussed first, because we're under the gun for that. But I think we gotta bring it up in September as something we need to start talking about.
Okay, so,
Do we need a vote?
why don't
No,
you
you don't need to vote on it.
why don't you just continue on the model and get that completed?
All right.
And get that to us, and then we can
We'll
hold a
set a date
meeting.
for start talking about it.
Right,
Okay.
because we got a few things ahead of that. Although that's a concern also.
Yeah.
Because I've been reading on that, and the regulations are they're really tight.
They're also very complicated and very unclear in a lot of ways, and that's what we've been discovering as we've been drafting this model ordinance, is that the DPH regulations, either you call them and say, what does this mean? And they say, oh, we're not sure yet, we haven't figured it out. So, I mean, I have to say this working group's been fantastic, because we've had one point person at PVPC who's been doing all the legwork on contacting DPH, getting all the questions answered for us, putting the model ordinance together for us. And then all of the municipalities that have been participating have been providing their feedback, and we've also had departments of public health sitting at the table from each of the municipalities, so they've been providing their perspective. So I think the ordinance is actually in a really good shape at this point. I'm pretty happy with where it's at. There's still some fine tweaking that needs to be done, but I feel like at this point, we could probably take what is there and kind of run with it. And, I mean, we're gonna have to modify it for ourselves anyway.
Right,
So-
but at least we'll have something to work with.
There's a good base, and it's based off the definitions and the DPH regulations, and it's in a pretty good spot, so.
Okay, so we'll just
Okay.
set aside a meeting in the future, but not too far.
Let's say maybe what's the September meeting? Not the 10th, but the other one?
So the one after
Because the
that?
10th, I think we're gonna be kind of busy, right?
Right.
24.
The 24th, so let's
Yeah.
say for September 24th, that'll be one of our agenda items, okay?
Harry won't be here.
We won't be here.
Sorry, Harry.
That's okay, you guys know the meeting.
Yeah, we don't need you.
Don't vote on anything.
We just won't vote on anything
Can't
unless,
vote on anything. But, so,
We're gonna
that's,
vacation.
but that's good. I need to know this though, because if we have a special permit application come forward, you need at least a 4-0 vote. It has to be a supermajority vote. So if you're not here on the 24th, then we can't hear any special permit applications,
well, so,
because there'll only be 3 of you,
Right.
until we get a 5th member.
Oh, and an alternate.
Anybody wants to?
Yeah, you guys want to
Come
come
on,
to this side of the table?
Yeah, but then we couldn't see on this. I would love to, Chad.
You be a
I
good
just
one.
want to be able to vote on
On this.
this issue.
Yeah, I know.
After this is done, maybe.
Just get a waiver, that's what the committee, that's what the Highway Business Committee did.
Wonderful.
I would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
Meeting is adjourned.
Wait.
Have a good evening, people.
I was the president, one meeting on the one. That's how it's
Vacation, yes.
No, you just got
I
back?
just got back.
Question on the first.
Getting back to
Busy day.
Confusion, remember the first thing we were talking about before? Those are changes.
Thank you.
Who wrote, you writing the changes?
Got some strands if you need them.
That's what I was wondering.
Oh, yeah.
See if there's anything.